Well, it's been a fine spring-like day over most of the country today, temperatures into the 60s. But things are turning colder now. We have a run of cold northerly winds coming right down from the Arctic Circle, right down across the whole country. They'll affect England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, but not just that, many parts of the continent too. This is just a sample of the temperatures we saw this afternoon. We said 15, 17 over much of Britain, 20, 21 over much of Northern Europe, but the cold air just getting into Scandinavia there. And if you run the sequence, what you'll see is that cold air floods south right across the whole of Europe, and by Thursday temperatures a good 10 degrees below what you've seen today. Now that process is already underway, and I think we'll notice tomorrow a much cooler day as well. Temperatures generally speaking 12, 13, that's 54, 55 degrees Fahrenheit, but in the far north and down that east coast it will feel particularly cold. Quite raw, in fact, quite a strong easterly wind there. Top temperature, for example, in the far north 5 is only 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Nevertheless, quite a dry, bright day for most of us. The best of the sunshine probably over Wales and western parts of England, but in the north and down that eastern coast, a fair few showers coming along, and in the far north in particular, the showers maybe rather on the wintry side. Well, that's just about it from me for tonight. I'll leave you with the sunset times for tomorrow and tomorrow's summary chart.
Four seriously injured after a stolen car crashes into a truck in Cleveland. And 2 more people die as the hit-and-run toll in the region continues to mount. Good evening. 3 teenagers and a lorry driver are seriously ill in hospital tonight after a stolen car crashed into a truck in Cleveland. 2 of the youths are now in a critical condition.
It took firemen an hour to free the 18-year-old from the front passenger seat of the Astra GTE after it crashed at Junction Road in Norton just before 6 this morning. He's critically ill on a life support machine in North Tees General. The 23-year-old driver is also in intensive care in Middlesbrough General, and a 15-year-old youth is in North Tees with less serious injuries. The stolen car hit a lamppost before hitting a lorry. The driver, 64-year-old David Smith from Greenlands Avenue in Middlesbrough, was thrown clear in the collision and is in Middlesbrough General with a fractured skull. Doctors say he's poorly but stable. The car was stolen from Stockton's Fairfield area last night. Police say they're looking at the possibility of charges, but will say no more until they've completed their inquiries. Inevitably, joyriding leaves a heartbreaking trail of destruction and death in its wake. In our region, in the last 5 months, 4 lives have been lost. In November, a Scarborough joyrider was killed and a 10-month-old baby died under the wheels of a stolen car in Scotswood on Tyneside. And in the same month, a 19-year-old died when he crashed a stolen motorbike into the front of a car on Middlesbrough's Thorntree estate. And just last month, a 15-year-old died when a stolen car he and a companion were in hit a milk lorry in the Linthorpe area of Middlesbrough.
Detectives have made a fresh appeal for help in finding the occupants of a car which mowed down and killed a 44-year-old man in Whitley Bay last Friday. James Longstaff was hit by the car as he crossed South Parade on the town's seafront early on Friday morning. He died later from severe head injuries.
Mr. Longstaff, a married man, recently separated from his wife and who lived at Blythe in Northumberland, had been drinking in Whitley Bay immediately before the incident. He'd been in the Royal Hotel on the town's esplanade, where he's known to have had a row with a group of men. But as he walked away from the hotel, a car swerved into South Parade, smashing into him as he crossed the road and then driving off without stopping. The car which hit Mr. Longstaff was a silver-blue Ford Sierra, which police found on Friday night almost totally destroyed by fire on this stretch of old railway track at Shire Moor on North Tyneside, about 3 miles from the scene of the hit and run. Police are now keen to speak to anyone who may have seen the car being driven to the spot behind the large Davidson's Ford garage before the vehicle was destroyed. So badly burned out was the car when its petrol tank exploded that only the bonnet and the front bumper were put on display by investigating detectives at their incident room at North Shields Police Station. The rest of the charred wreckage is still being examined by forensic experts.
We have information now which leads us to believe that, in fact, Mr. Longstaff may have been involved in quite a heated verbal confrontation in the Royal Hotel on the promenade, Whitley Bay, immediately prior to this fatal incident. and it is paramount that we trace either the persons involved in this dispute with Mr Longstaff, or indeed anyone who has information as to the identities of the men involved or what the confrontation was about.
Is it possible that the men involved in the argument were driving the car which knocked down Mr Longstaff?
Obviously it is always possible. We're not at this stage saying it is, but we have to cover every eventuality.
And a 64-year-old man has died after a hit-and-run accident at Blyth in Northumberland. Henry Broadhead of Patterdale Road was knocked from his bike by a green Vauxhall Cavalier in Albion Way. Police are appealing for anyone in the area at around 10:40 last night to contact them. A man has been charged in connection with yesterday's armed siege at a mini-market in East Stanley in County Durham. 40-year-old James Hagan has been charged with kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment and possession of an offensive weapon. He'll appear before Derwentshire magistrates in concert tomorrow. A new anti-drugs campaign has been launched in the region, aimed not at the youngsters who take them, but their parents. Police at Concert in County Durham are so concerned about the growth in drug taking, they're trying to educate parents about the problems.
For nearly 4 years now, PC Michael Banks has been telling youngsters about the perils of drug taking. As drugs liaison officer with Concert Police, he's established a well-rehearsed routine. Using a display cabinet of confiscated drugs, he describes the various kinds on offer and the devastating effects they can have.
That heroin there is only 30% pure. That's what I'm telling you. The rest of it might be glucose, brick dust, talcum powder, anything to make it up to the required amount that that dealer needs to sell. And that is stuff that you're going to be injecting perhaps into your veins.
Despite Constable Banks' efforts, drug taking in the Concert area is on the increase, and he believes the time has now come to take the message to parents as well.
It's a very taboo subject still for parents to talk to their own children about drugs. When do you begin to talk to your own child about drugs and the problems that it could cause? You might feel as if you're encouraging them to go out. It's a very difficult thing to try and impress the dangers without either glamorizing it or without giving horror stories. You've got to make it credible.
Stop searches by police in the Concert area have netted as many drugs in the first 3 months of this year as in the whole of last year. Most teenagers have been offered drugs or know someone who takes them.
Now let's have a look and see what tomorrow's weather has in store for us. Northerly winds will mean temperatures dropping and getting no higher than about 9 Celsius, 48 Fahrenheit, but it will be dry and bright. That's it from me. Good night.
Next on Tyne Tea is the second and concluding part of tonight's comedy film Police Academy. The antics resume in just a moment after this short break.